Welcome back. I am joined now by Mike McCormick. Mike, so good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. I've actually loved your story, what you've told us so far, and I wanted the viewers to hear your story as well. You have actually worked in several White Houses from different administrations, and also under Biden when he was vice president, and you have a story to tell about what you've seen him do and not do while he was vice president. So let's start there. What was that like working in the White House when he was vice president?
Well, my job was as a stenographer, so I had to listen to everything he said, which was a chore. Because back then, he wasn't as feeble as he is now. So he would talk and talk and talk and never stop. My job was to record it and type it in the official White House transcript. If he was speaking in a speech, whether he was speaking to the press. And if he traveled internationally, I was on Air Force 2 with him. At the time, I didn't see anything unusual. I left the White House in 2018, eventually got a hold, and I wrote a book about how unpresidential he was for the 2020 election, and eventually I got a hold of the Hunter Biden laptop through Marco Polo, their anti-corruption nonprofit. And when I got a hold of that, I started going back and forth between what I knew about Joe and where he was when we were in Ukraine and seeing the email traffic in the laptop. And I put together a Substack and this book. This is The Case to Impeach and Imprison Joe Biden. And I have conclusive evidence in my book that Joe Biden is a criminal. He's a criminal. He broke the law in Ukraine, setting up a kickback scheme with his son, with the Broussard Holdings, the Ukrainian natural gas conglomerate. And then he went and he sold the southern border to the cartels. And that's another part of the book. And since I found those things out, I tried to get that information in front of the legal system. I went to the FBI. They didn't respond to my tip. I left them a witness tip. I said, I saw Joe Biden break the law on Air Force 2, and they didn't get back to me. I went to U.S. Attorney David Weiss, who was investigating Hunter Biden. I said, I saw Joe Biden break the law on Air Force 2, and they didn't get back to me. So I wrote the book. Here it is. You can get it on Amazon or you can get it on Barnes & Noble.
Have you received any kickback from this book from the Biden administration or any, the FBI, anybody like that?
No, and one of the parts of the book that's interesting is I got in touch with some of the journalists who work in the White House. One of the journalists, Stephen Nelson from the New York Post, actually asked Jake Sullivan at a White House briefing about my allegations, because Jake Sullivan was involved. It was a flight on April 21st, 2014. Jake Sullivan came back to brief the press anonymously as a senior administration official. My witness tip to the FBI was I was standing next to him and I saw it was Jake Sullivan. And he told in this briefing, they asked him, what kind of energy assistance are you bringing to Ukraine? He told them two things that would directly benefit Broussard Holdings. At the time, no one knew that Hunter Biden was secretly on the board of Broussard Holdings. Joe knew. Jake Sullivan probably knew. And so that's corruption. And so I told that to Stephen Nelson. He did a big story on it. He confronted Jake Sullivan in the White House briefing room. Jake Sullivan denied it. So the Biden White House is aware that these allegations are out there. They're just trying to ignore it. The more they ignore it, the more louder I speak. And thank you for getting me on with you guys.
Absolutely, because the world needs to know. You've seen this firsthand. And you talked a little bit about Burisma. I want to talk about the border, too. You mentioned that Joe Biden has sold the border to the cartel. Explain that.
I went with him on a trip to Honduras in 2012, and it was a very suspicious trip, and I have the details in the book. Out of that came several initiatives of the Biden White House, of the Obama-Biden White House, to team up with Honduran presidents who were smuggling drugs in the United States by the ton, cocaine. And so what Joe Biden did specifically to sell the border to the cartels was, in 2014 in the summer, as he was vice president, he started a very strong relationship with then president of Honduras, a guy named Juan Orlando Hernandez. All of a sudden, all these unaccompanied minors started showing up at the border in 2014. That's when they started building these cages and these restriction areas for these minors, because they just showed up. There's never been a real explanation why they showed up. As soon as that started happening, Joe Biden came up with something called the Alliance for Prosperity. from 2014 to 2016, he sent $500 million American taxpayer money to this president of Honduras, who at the time, he knew he was smuggling drugs. He knew he was smuggling drugs. There's a DEA investigation of this president. They had his brother on electronic recording saying, I'm going to use the government to smuggle drugs. Joe knew that, and he still gave this guy all this money. That is what I believe set up this cartel, human trafficking crisis that we have right now.
Unbelievable, the things that you've seen. And we know that he's corrupt, but to hear firsthand, someone who has worked in his White House while he was vice president, traveled with him, and has seen it, has gone to the FBI, and everyone's turning a blind eye.
They are, and the way to get the word out is buy the book, tell your friends, and I've gone to U.S. attorney. There was a U.S. attorney here in town named Leo Wise. He works for U.S. Attorney David Weiss, who's a special counsel. I've sent him a copy of this book. This is the evidence. I said, you need to have me testify in front of your grand jury. So far, I haven't heard back.
Well, we want everyone to read this book. We want you to go out and get it. Tell us again the name of the book and where people can buy it.
The Case to Impeach and Imprison Joe Biden is available on Amazon. And if you buy it on Amazon in the Kindle, there's some click-through links where you can see an actual video that Joe Biden took where he's got kids on his lap at a U.S. embassy, and he does all this weird stuff. One of the things he does is he has an engagement with a guy who was secretly on the board of Burisma Holdings at that time. Wow. He videoed himself doing his crime. That's how dumb he is.
And it's there.
And it's there.
For the public to see. Go to Amazon. Check that out. Mike, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for coming out and telling your story, because a lot of people wouldn't do that.
That's right. Thanks, Vanessa.
Yes, and we'll be right back. Go get that book. We'll be right back here on Right Side Broadcasting Network.